So it's typically all these sorts of questions. Where are we? Are we an entrepreneurial company? Are we an emerging management style company? Are we highly managerial? Where do you want to be? How are you going to get there? What resources do you need? So and so on and so on. You can sort of read all those at your leisure. One model I've always liked is the McKinsey's Three Horizons model, and in the growing number of startup companies I've been involved with, we've always used it, and it's been probably in 9 out of 10 cases it's been pretty successful. You've got to get a few duds every now and then, but it tends to work. And basically the Three Horizon model looks like this. When you start a business, a good customer is anyone who buys something from you. Anyone who's got money in their hand is a good customer. Forget segmentation, forget relationships, forget all that stuff. You've got rent to pay, you've got salaries to pay, you've got suppliers to pay. You just want to get money in the door. That money may not be coming from work you actually want to do. It may be coming in markets that are highly competitive. So over time, you will evolve. So you're just trying to drive revenue. And as you're driving revenue, you get some customers, you want to hang on to them. You want to grow a bit. And you might be looking more about, so you measure success in terms of efficiency. How much money do we make per full-time employee? How much money do we make per customer? What are our net contribution markets like? But you also start to think about, well, are there new markets? Can I develop new products or new services? And over time, I'd like my non-preferred work, so the money that gives me revenue but doesn't have long-term value for the organisation. So we start to think about, well, so we're still measuring things the same way. This is often referred to now, and this is often referred to as next year. So the gap between Horizon 1 and Horizon 2 generally doesn't tend to be very big. The big opportunity comes up around Horizon 3, which is generally in the sort of 3 to 5 year stage. So we start to, back here in Horizon 2, arguably in Horizon 1, it can be hard to do. You start to think about those things you want to do to have a long-term revenue and profit base. What sort of services do we want to offer? What sort of customers do we want to have? Now, the important thing about that is that you're talking about having a different business in Horizon 3 to what you have in Horizon 1. So your business model has to be different. If you just do in Horizon 3 what you do in Horizon 1, you will fail, because the gap between your business model and the capabilities required by the marketplace in which you're going to compete will fail. It'll be too large. And so what you're trying to do is create options. What are the different things that we can do? And so our measures of success are different. We start to think about long-term things. We want to look at repeat business. We want to look at industry relationships. We want to be the number one choice to the number one customers. We look at customer service rankings. We want to grow double-digit growth. Do our employees stay with us? Are we a good place to work? Do we grow our employee base through word of mouth rather than advertising? Do we have to pay, do we pay competitive salaries but not excessive salaries to get good people? Do we have this thing here, options, options, options? Have we actually generated some real options for our business? Because at some stage, you're going to value your business, and options are worth money. The simple ability to be flexible and be able to do different things are worth money. I've been involved in startup businesses going through this process, and at this point, people have paid an option for the culture of the organisation, which was entrepreneurial and innovative, with high levels of employee retention. They actually bought the company because they wanted to work out how they could develop a culture like we had in this particular organisation and put it back into the parent company, which had bought it. Didn't work. We sort of figured it wouldn't, but you could. But we had options which were based around the culture of the organisation. So that's why I say what gets you to here won't get you there. The skills, resources, partners, types of employees, types of products, types of services, type of brand that you manage there won't get you to there. So somewhere along the line, you have to change your business model. So one of the first people I ever heard about who did this, you all heard of Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems was started by a guy called Scott McNally. And Scott McNally was he didn't know anything about this business model. He was a great believer in the fact that you needed to continually reinvent your business. And Sun Microsystems, like a lot of technology companies, have very long corridors. And if he saw you in the corridor, he would come running towards you. And he's a big burly guy and would bail you up against the wall and say, "What are you doing to destroy our business?" And you had to tell him. And he would say, his sort of philosophy was, well, we need to be destroying our own business before our competitors do it. We've got to keep on reinventing ourselves. Get rid of the old stuff, start thinking about new ideas. He used to do it to everyone. The guy who told me the story was actually a visitor. And he'd say, "Look, I've got a visitor's tag on, I don't actually work here." He said, "I don't care, give me some ideas." He was that sort of guy. You're not leaving until you give me some ideas. So often we sort of think about it a bit like this. You know, your existing business are often, new businesses are often high touch, low productivity. What I mean by that is that you've got new customers, you've got to educate them about your business. You sort of think about, remember when we looked at the model of the value of long-term relationships? We said in the early years you tend to lose money on customers. A lot of that's because of high touch. You've got to go and find the customer, you've got to educate them on how your business works, you've got to set up accounts for them, you've got to service the customer, and often that's done by the founder of the business. So they've got their hands on everything, so it's a high-touch business, difficult to accelerate because it's limited by the capability of the entrepreneur. And often entrepreneurs are technical people, or people with an idea rather than managerial skill. It's a difficult thing because you don't want them to lose that entrepreneurial flair, but you can't afford them just to become managerial, where everyone's got to have boxes in organisation structures and that type of thing. And little opportunity for expansion. So this is all about defending, a bit of organic growth, so a bit more work with existing customers, and a big focus on efficiency. Whereas Horizon 3 is very, very different. And the important thing about Horizon 3 is it's a new business because you are fundamentally delivering value in a very different way. Now you go back to when we spoke about things like core competencies and value chains and all those sorts of things. If you're delivering value in a different way, well, firstly, if you're not delivering value in a different way, you're still in Horizon 1. But secondly, if you're delivering different value, you must be delivering it in a different way. Different organisational focus, different organisational resources, different partners. So that's why we say it's a new business model. So look at someone like Amazon. You all know the background of Amazon, so I won't go through that in detail. But Amazon was a business model that for many years people thought was a business model built around selling books online. That was never their business model. Their business model was built around the value of the data. That's the asset they've got. That's why they're worth $80 billion. I mean, they made $1 billion profit last year. That's a lot of money. Well, 970 million. That's a lot of money. That doesn't make a company worth $80 billion. What makes it worth $80 billion is their option value. And the option value is created because they've got this massive customer database with huge amounts of information that can be applied in lots of different ways, in lots of different industries. It's that database that provides them with option value. Not sure how much you know about Amazon, but they're all the companies they own. Well, they own over 100 companies. They're all the different companies they own. Online diapers, different types of soaps, different types of internet movie database, CD deliveries, Zappos, which is an online clothing and footwear retailer. Zappos are quite interesting because Zappos, for a number of years, were voted one of the top 5 customer service companies in America, an online retailer. High levels of customer service. Amazon bought them because they wanted to understand why they were so good at customer service. So a lot of these organisations appear to have no real relationship to the core Amazon business, except they brought revenue and customers with them in some case. Well, in this case, lots of customer information, great search capability, great search technologies. In this case, great capability around customer service. These are some of the other businesses that they own, so they have lots of different businesses under the Amazon name. So when Amazon started, their core value proposition was price, convenience and selection. They've never really veered away from that. And their strategy was to get big fast. This was their business model. Spending money on brand awareness, getting new customers, and of course there's a technology platform that underpins all that. So they have this interesting model. As they grow, they get economies of scale, they can buy things in larger amounts, so they get price reductions. So that gives them a lower cost structure. The lower cost structure means that they can offer lower prices. Now, just remember my, I guess my warning when we looked at Porter's model. Lowest cost doesn't necessarily mean lowest price. Lowest cost is a strategy in its own right. But in this case, they've taken their lowest cost structure and turned it into lower prices. That improves the customer experience because it's cheaper. So you get an immediate improvement in value by providing things more cheaply. Because they're more cheaply, more customers come along, generates more traffic. If you generate more traffic, you get more people wanting to sell stuff. We'll go to Amazon because they've got so many more people going to their site. As you get more sellers, you get greater selection, greater convenience, you know, a range of delivery options, a range of different product types. That also improves the customer experience. So you've got this lovely virtuous circle of activities that are self-reinforcing. And so, interestingly with Amazon, they actually think about themselves as having 3 different customers, and they're trying to develop value propositions for 3 different customer groups. Now, we would typically think about, you know, consumers and their value proposition, but the sellers are a really important part of Amazon's business model. You know, if they don't have sellers supplying to them, they can't create the selection and the convenience for the end user. And then, of course, the developers, you know, who wants to use Amazon's developing services? So Amazon provide a lot of information. You can be a registered Amazon developer, and they'll provide you, you know, they sort of bring you inside the tent and provide you access to lots of technology and technical information. So they have a number of different customers. So why do people go to Amazon? Now, how did Amazon become successful? This is a very simple model. I've seen a 200-page presentation or a 200-slide presentation on Amazon, which I won't take you through. I'll keep this fairly brief. But basically, they thought that the key to success were these measurements. Not how much did customers spend, not what margins did we make on them, not how much do we make per full-time employee. They probably still measure that stuff, but their goal was attention, attraction, retention. So attention, can we get people to go to our site? When they go to our site, how long will they stay there? And when they stay there, or sorry, when they come there, will they come back again? So these are all the things that Amazon look at. These are all the things that are answered through the information in their database. They also realised that because at the time they started, which was, you know, mid-90s, e-commerce was a relatively new thing. So you've got to build trust. So they built all these ideas around trust. You know, quality, value, timeliness, appropriateness of goods and services, reputation and security. So they were the first people to focus on trust as a really important point of differentiation around their brand. Every organisation talks in the world talks about the importance of trust. Amazon have actually created it. The whole idea of, you know, how long do people stay? So one of their measures is stickiness, which they measure through time at the website, number of visits, number of pages viewed, and it involves all of these elements, you know, convenience, engagement, community and relevance. So, you know, how do they keep things relevant? That's the original Amazon site. That's what it looks like today. So relevance is about content and it's about the products and services they offer. Engagement, Amazon's interesting. And we talk about co-production. Go to Amazon and have a look at how much content is created on that site by Amazon customers. Particularly one of the most important features of Amazon, which is customer reviews. That content's created by customers. It is a fantastic example of co-creation in practice. And it's worth a fortune to Amazon. So people go there and they interact with other people. But they also see their information really well presented. You know, so the design of the website, the way in which people see their own information presented, and of course you get to say whether it was useful or not. So people get the feedback. You know, the community is about the Amazon community and being able to link people together with shared interests, online discussion groups, online book clubs, access to information. You know, what's on the New York Times bestseller list? What were the biggest selling books in the world last year? What won the Times Literary Awards? Who won the Nobel Prize for Literature? What have you bought before that might be relevant to what you might buy and what you might be interested in buying in the future? Is that your fake Amazon name? Sorry? Is that your fake Amazon name? No. This is no. I didn't make all these slides. There's someone, and I generally spell Annabelle with 2 N's when I'm using it as a fake name. The whole thing about customisation, ownership and belonging and sharing stuff, convenience. You can actually get a one-word phrase and put your name in and pay for all your bills with Amazon. Speed of delivery, not such a big thing in Australia because of the international shipping costs. So their business model has sort of evolved like that. So you go back to how they built their business model, and this is going to be a bunch of very busy slides, but you go back to online retailing. They wanted to they set out to be a mass marketer, low transaction profitability, high number of transactions, small margins, very high volume of transactions. That can only happen if they can go to a global market. To go to a global market, they need a whole bunch of partners. They don't make books, they don't print books. At the time, they didn't store books. All they were was a bunch of servers with an internet site that linked people who had something to sell to people who wanted to buy something. You've got to set up transaction accounts, you've got to set up banking accounts, you've got to set up payment accounts, bookstores, authors, and so on. And so the value proposition, as we said before, was around those sorts of things, and online retailing used the partners to deliver the value proposition to those consumers, and Amazon just sat in the middle of it. So when we say Amazon was a new business model, that's all it was. But of course, they also had to set up these things to make it work. Fulfillment, IT infrastructure, the marketing, the technology, the content, which built trust, which built responsiveness, which built communities. So that's the key to success of Amazon. This bit, other people were already doing. This bit was a bit they added on. The auctions and Z shops, they're just providing intermediation services. So they're just an intermediary between buyers and sellers. So their customers are buyers and sellers of products, and Amazon are the agency that sits in the middle, and they take commissions. That's their revenue. Similar sort of thing with Marketplace. They just take commissions. Partnerships and logistics service providers. So people who might be currently online retailers, they do the fulfillment. So you can buy stuff. Zappos, for example, don't deliver to Australia. You can get them to deliver it to Amazon, and Amazon will deliver on their behalf. When you go to Amazon now, you can choose when you buy a product. I don't know, take something that's a generic product, a pair of Nike runners. You can actually choose which retailer you buy it from. Amazon's one of those retailers. You can choose a retailer. So Amazon then do the fulfillment for that retailer. So that's what that's all about. And finally, their e-commerce platform, which I spoke about before, mass customised web services. So you can get your own bit of their cloud computing services. And finally, of course, we get to ebooks and Kindle, which is their, I think, I'm not sure if Kindle downloads have outpaced books, but I think they're getting close. And so they're all the things that you need to do. I mean, clearly, Amazon don't make the Kindle. Amazon don't write the software for Kindle. It's all done by other people. Amazon just sort of sit in the middle, offering, this is their value proposition. This is now, portability is now part of it. So they've just got a different value proposition that involves electronic delivery rather than a physical delivery. So Amazon is a really good example of a cluster network. I just want to spend a little bit of time in finishing on this idea of clusters. Clusters are going to be a really significant part of your life as managers. Creating them, working in them. Because clusters are just the reality of life these days. So, clusters or networks, some well-known examples, Silicon Valley and Bollywood. If you go to Bollywood, if you had to find people who understand project management, you find them in Bollywood, because making a film's a project. If you had to find lawyers who specialised in media rights, you go to Bollywood. If you want to find actors, actresses, and so on, everyone involved in film production, you go to Bollywood. Silicon Valley, you all know much better. Basically, clusters typically tend to be geographic concentrations, but they don't need to be anymore because of the power of the internet and sort of electronic connectedness. So why do people cluster? Reducing costs is an interesting one. You might remember a couple of lectures ago, I said that it used to be that the most profitable companies in the world tended to be the biggest ones. So in any industry, the people who had the biggest market share tended to be the most profitable. And they were the most profitable because they had economies of scale, because they had the most production. Clusters put an end to that. Cluster meant that you could actually go and source things with someone else who could aggregate demand from a variety of customers. And their total demand was more than yours as an individual. So if you were General Motors making axles, and Ford and Toyota and whoever else went and found an axle manufacturer, they could buy axles more cheaply than you could make them. So clustering was first set up to reduce costs, but what they found is that as people specialised, they were able to improve innovation and become more efficient and find ways of solving problems. And they learned what it takes to be competitive. So this is just an example of some high-tech clusters in the US. Now, we all know about Silicon Valley, but there are some other interesting ones around the place. This research park here is interesting. This research park used to be, their area of expertise was actually tobacco growing, because it's in Virginia, and 3 of the major universities there were funded by large tobacco industry. And of course, you know, crop yield and all those sorts of things. Of course, that was an industry in which their business model wasn't going to keep on working. You know, Silicon Valley. Everyone here has heard of Intel. Intel was actually founded by people who were originally working for a company called Tektronix. Tektronix was founded by a guy called William Shockley, who won the Nobel Prize for Physics. He was the guy who largely invented the silicon chip. William Shockley was a brilliant inventor and a very difficult man to work with. So the people who worked for him left and started Intel. They would have happily stayed there as employees, but he was such a difficult man. Intel, the founders of Intel were all academics. Andy Grove was a PhD graduate from the University of California at Berkeley and worked there as a lecturer for a number of years before joining Tektronix. Now, we just look at all the companies that they've spun off. Silicon Valley is an interesting place. A lot of these companies in here were people, as the colour suggests, who left Intel to go and start their own business. And in many cases, their first big customer was Intel. Now that's sort of unusual, isn't it? You know, you have high-valued employees who leave to go and start their own company. Typically what we worry about is they've taken all our secrets with them and they're going to set up in competition. Silicon Valley doesn't work like that. It works in a very, very different way. So a guy I know in Silicon Valley, actually he's further south, he's down near LA, another Australian guy. He was a champion pole vaulter. He's a dual Commonwealth gold medalist, dual Olympic representative, went to university in America on a college scholarship, never came back. And his area of expertise is big data and predictive modelling of data. He basically hired the predictive modelling team out of Microsoft because Microsoft said that's not what we're going to be in, but we think big data is important. So their single biggest customer is Microsoft. So Silicon Valley is a very different place. Actually, I'll come back to that if we've got... Actually, no. How many of you are ever thinking about starting your own business? Okay. I might play this video and then we might finish for tonight, and I knew this would happen.
So Silicon Valley took about 80 years to create. And what's important about Silicon Valley is not everything you see, but what you don't see. It's the culture of this valley that makes this place special. And that culture took a long time in the self-reinforcement of the right people being here and the wrong people leaving here to eventually create the ethos that makes this place what it is.
Now, the type of investors you have at an early stage, angel investors, as you call them, versus venture capitalists is a very different business model. Let me just quickly... Okay, I think that might do us for tonight. I've got a few more to go through, but it'll only take me a few minutes next week. I can send you an email of where to find that video if anyone's interested in seeing it again. In fact, there's a longer form video. I'm a terrible conference attendee, and I've spent so much of my life in academia standing out the front. I'm actually terrible at sitting in the audience. He was one of the most compelling speakers I've ever heard. He actually spoke for about an hour. But I can sort of point you to a sort of longer form video of what he was talking about. Anyone who's interested in entrepreneurialism and venture capital, happy to send you the link. Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Now the last thing is on the assignment. Now that we've had the last group, I can send out